One of the things we have just witnessed, as Anushka pointed out, was rushing through cuts to financial help for disabled people, making it harder for mentally and physically disabled people to get the personal independence payment, halving the health-related element of universal credit, all designed so that the Chancellor would not breach her fiscal rules. Fiscal rules which many people would say are way too binding because they're about a forecast of, debts and deficit 5 years from now. Do you think this is a rational way to make really sensitive decisions like welfare decisions?
So the problem is always to go to the source of the problem and not to the symptoms. And one of the biggest problems in this country is not that we've been spending too much or investing too much. We've been spending and investing too little. We have one of the lowest levels of business investment in the OECD. We're 28th. We have one of the lowest levels of G7 investments in terms of public investments. Had we invested the average in the G7 over the last 20 years, we would have invested in the public side 500 billion more. So the real question is...
that the rules that constrain investment, the so-called fiscal rules, are badly designed?
Yes. So the current fiscal rules are imposing, if you want, the idea of cuts, but missing the point that actually by cutting and by not being strategic about how to invest, we're hurting the denominator of debt to GDP. So you could actually be reducing your deficits because of the fiscal rules and having this kind of target of just reducing short-term spending because of those rules. But if you're also cutting in all those things, including the social spend, which actually means that a lot of people will need, it costs less to educate someone than to put them in prison. So all these, cuts, whether it's on the health spend, on the disabled spend, on the winter fuel tax payments, then what happens is that those actually have social consequences that cost the government more in the long run. So there's two different problems. One is that we're just using these short-term fiscal rules without looking at the long-term benefits of public investments, but also that we're not looking at it systemically.
And so very, very briefly,
true.
It literally is. Like it's the same problem with Elon. You're looking at one side of the ledger. Just cutting doesn't mean you're saving. Like, let's say you get rid of, fucking airports or whatever, or airport authority. You might save 20 billion, but then all of your planes crash and people die, which is going to cost you a lot more in the long run. So if you just look at the money you don't spend, that does not equate to money saved.
Exactly. It's like cutting down on the maintenance bills for the house that you live in and then having to buy a whole ass new house when the house collapses. Or say with a school roof, by any chance. I don't know if any country's had a problem with collapsing school roofs in the recent past.
I'm literally a communist.
I'm trying to rack my brain on that one, but I can't think of anything now.
And that's the thing as well. It also cuts into the broad failure of austerity. When she's talking about like the debt to GDP denominator, what she really means is to explain to people is that if you grow your economy through productive investment, whether it's public or private, you can use that as a way of which that no matter how much debt you take out to be able to finance that growth, if you're growing faster than you're paying down that debt, that means that your overall debt to GDP ratio is dropping. And that's what happens if you have strategic investments. She spoke earlier in the show about how all of the big things that have been a linchpin of American technology, things like touch screens and the internet and microprocessors, these are all the function of American public-led research, DARPA, the universities. These are all public institutions that have had public money put into them strategically for certain types of investment that have then led to innovation and increases in productivity that have benefited the comparative advantage of American or European or certain kinds of markets, depending on where that research was used and how that was innovated. If we'd have been doing that during the austerity period under George Osborne, we might have had more business investment into this country, might have had more of an innovative sector that allowed for more growth, made us be more productive. Because remember, we've had stagnant productivity since 2010. It's barely grown since the financial crisis. And even at the time, people were critiquing George Osborne, including Rachel Reeves, saying, well, you can't just cut public investment and expect private investment to fill the gap. And yet, that's what Rachel Reeves is doing right now because of her stupid fiscal rules, and even scrapped a £28 billion pledge for green investment to replace it with private, which now isn't happening either. So she's a failure on both George Osborne's terms and her own terms in being a good chancellor.
tariffs are going to slow growth here. It will almost certainly mean that the Chancellor will again run out of so-called headroom, and therefore she will face pressure to put up taxes or cut spending again in the autumn. Would you advise her not to do that, to ignore these fiscal constraints?
Well, the problem is that it's self-imposed harm. There's no deterministic law causing these fiscal rules to be into place. So yes, the tariffs will hurt the UK economy. All the different evidence is suggesting that. And so that will hurt the revenues even more, which makes it even more of a reason not to have these false budget constraints, because ultimately what we need is to expand productive capacity. So if you actually have smart strategic public investments that crowd in private sector investments and the social spend, which makes sure that the citizens in this country live well and are nourished in their well-being, the social and economic determinants of health, then all these things are actually good for the economy. But that doesn't mean helicopter money. That means actually having a strategy, these 5 missions that the government has, that needs to be invested in.
Yeah, I'm glad you remember.
And that's the thing, really important.
Because the government seems to have forgotten.
When she talks about the linchpin of productive capacity, that doesn't just mean the actual things you use to be productive, which is true. We do need more investment in these things, which is why I was such a big fan before they cut it of the £28 billion investment, investing in the supply side on energy. It's incredibly productive. Reducing energy costs make other businesses more productive and makes it more incentivized for people to come and invest in this country. If you have a big, heavily subsidized, high capacity, and high supply energy sector, which is why we are non-competitive, because our energy is more expensive everywhere else, would have made it much easier, would have brought energy bills down for both residential and commercial people. It would have been much easier for everybody if they'd have done that investment. And they haven't done it. And it's just the same when it comes to things like PIP or the social spend or the public realm more broadly, in that people are more productive if they're well. People are more productive if they don't have shit going on, if they don't have poor mental health. So we need more investment in these things to help these things get better. And we're not doing that. We're taking money away from the disabled. Like PIP is something for people who are in work, and they'll be less likely to be productive workers if you take their PIP away.
True, but have you considered that the cruelty is the point?
Well, literally, it's posturing. It's first of all, people like Liz Kendall always want to cut welfare payments, and Rachel Reeves said she wanted to in 2014. Like, this is who they are. But on top of that, I think Morgan McSweeney and Keir Starmer and Pat McFadden think it'll make them look like sensible governors, because they're essentially mocking George Osborne as their blueprint for what sensible governance looks like. Because
they want to be seen as the economically competent party to the Daily Mail and the Sun. They want that section of the media establishment to think of them as the sensible party, especially when the Tories are seen as the unsensible 22 billion black hole Liz Truss party. So that's all they want to do, and that you have to do the performative thing of clamp down on the poorest in society, because that's the only thing that you can do in the neoliberal land.
And if you look at the crosstabs for current polling as well, divided by household income, in the lowest household incomes, Labour have plummeted. And Reform UK, the slash the state and get rid of all the public spending party, they are now ahead amongst people who are the poorest. Labour are winning amongst all of the high earners now. Where it used to be the Lib Dem territory, Labour are now winning with these high earners and these crosstabs, right? And it's like, well, that shows you the kind of people who are backing Labour, people who are so removed from the consequences of poor economic spending that all they care about is the vibes of people who look like they're fiscally competent, even if they do stupid stuff like welfare cuts, which are not good for the economy.
And people will say that they're voting against their best interest, and that is true. But people who make points like that often miss the same problem that was missed by the same people before Brexit. When you've got no skin in the game, you sort of don't care what the alternative is. It's the alternative. Just like, if I don't have any future, then you trying to sell me on a continuance of the same bullshit that fucked me in the first place, I'll just throw the pieces in the air and see where they land. That's exactly what a lot of people did in Brexit. People of Sunderland didn't necessarily think it was a great idea, but they thought the alternative, the status quo that was being offered by David Cameron, was evil. So fuck it. Anything but the current thing. It can't be worse. I've got no fucking skin in the game. And that's exactly why people are going to vote Reform. Not because they think they're necessarily brilliant or they like Nigel Farage, but they fucking despise the Tory Labour uniparty bullshit.
Exactly. And as I said before, when you looked at those same crosstabs, it's non-voters who are voting Reform. It's people who's had so little skin in the game they didn't even fucking show up. They looked at the entirety of the public realm in terms of the politicians and what they're offering and said, nope, I do not want to participate. So they're so checked out that only an iconoclast is someone who would be able to win them over. It doesn't matter that their interests aren't aligned in terms of policy, because the people who should historically have been looking out for them were too busy mollycoddling middle-class people to win over swing seats in rural south of England.
And it's so annoying because literally, if you look under the posts, and I know it's Twitter, so it's not like necessarily representative of everything, but I think there's a certain utility to looking at those things. If you look under the posts of him going like, we've removed a squillion gazillion people from the country, aren't we awesome, and we're against the illegal smuggling gangs, and all of this shit, it's all just like, you're a traitor, you're a piece of shit, you're still letting in 1 million migrants, open doors, blah blah blah.
No one
you're not
believes
winning
them.
any of these people over. No one. You're not winning a single fucking person over with this rhetoric. But what you are doing with everything else you're doing is removing any chance of any progressives voting for you.
I mean, that's what the polling is showing.
People by having any kind of semblance of an actual Labour policy, but you don't, and so you're going to get destroyed and be remembered as an absolute fuck up.
Literally, and that's the thing is that when you look at the same polling, like Labour 2024 voters are voting for the Lib Dems and the Greens. Most of the Reform UK uptick is in non-voters and Tory voters. There is a lot of talking about Labour losing votes to Reform, and maybe that's happening in like Wales and in the northeast. But there are loads of people in this areas who are also just not going to show up as well, who did vote Labour. If you enjoyed the video, make sure that you like and leave a comment. That helps the video out in the algorithm. If you subscribe and ring the bell, it'll let you know when I go live. I stream every day on YouTube and Twitch. You can also follow all of my socials down in the description. And if you want to support me in a more financial manner, there's a join button for membership to just 99p to be a member on YouTube, as well as a Patreon, and there's some merch there as well. And hopefully I'll catch you on the next video. Take care.